Folks, I believe in forgiveness and redemption, but only if you do too. If you don't as a leftist, I'm sorry, but you can't be forgiven either. New rules. You wanted them. Now you can chew on them. Ladies and gentlemen, this fight is coming to your door. You better get ready for it. I'm not kidding. There's an article I saw that talks about this very fight today, how you're going to have to pick a side, and quickly. You're not going to have a choice. There's an article I saw yesterday by a friend of mine, Jesse Kelly. It's an interesting article. I'll put it up in the show notes, and you should read it because it describes the contours of something we've talked about quite a bit on this show. Joe and I have referred to it as the new rules. Here's Jesse's piece. It'll be up in the show notes today. It's short, but I encourage you to read it. Jesse's a military veteran who's been around the block. He has his own show as well. And in Jesse's piece, he talks about how the traditional war here has been lost. The headline of the piece is, it's time to go offensive. We've lost this war, but don't go home and suck your thumb. It's in American Consequences. What he means by the traditional war is lost is, ladies and gentlemen, the cultural institutions and media institutions have fallen. Like that movie, Olympus has fallen. Right? They've fallen. The data is evident. Doesn't mean we don't fight back, try to reclaim them. But those skirmishes have been lost. The media is dominated exclusively by leftist activists. College institutions are no longer institutions of higher learning. They're propaganda institutions where your kids learn nothing but how to become a radical leftist activist. The media has been entirely corrupted on messaging. Science has been corrupted. Pressure to silence yourself in the face of bad data. So Jesse makes an interesting point. Again, we kind of phrased it as new rules, but he phrases it a little differently. How maybe it's time to turn to guerrilla tactics now. If we can't beat them, well, let's join them. Quote, Jesse Kelly's piece. Do not waste your fighting against this modern social justice warrior insanity. Distasteful as it may be, you need to embrace it. This is our way forward. This is our only option now. Feed them heaping helpings of their own medicine until a truce is called. The famous New Rules show we did, where I declared that we will now be using the leftist rules against them until a truce is called, which we recorded a couple of years ago, received a lot of interesting backlash from maybe about 20% of viewers who said, Dan, we can't do that. The leftist rules are immoral, and we shouldn't embrace immoral rules. What's your option?
Right.
Remember that, Joe? I'm serious. What's your option? Your option is what? To allow your kids' lives to be destroyed? That's not immoral? Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind, I'm not talking about violating the sanctity of big R God-given rights or anything like that. That's a leftist thing, violence and all that stuff. That's their thing. I'm talking about a simple set of rules, the new rules they've declared are rules. In other words, they've declared that boycotts are an effective way to silence people who have opposing voices. The right, including me, my friend Sean Hannity, have always said boycotts really suck. Pardon my language. Hasn't stopped the left one bit, Joe, right? They're bankrupting just about anybody they can get their hands on who happens to profess not a conservative thought, a non-radical leftist thought. Anyone they can get their hands on, they'll bankrupt. So if boycotts suck, well, let's show them. Let's show them how much boycotts suck. I don't like boycotts. I hate boycotts. But if Major League Baseball and others want to take a stand, we can take a stand too. And maybe when enough people fight back guerrilla warfare style and start taking the left's own tactics and shoving them down the left's throats, maybe then they'll get the hint that this is probably not effective. And what the right was warning us about a long time ago, that boycotts are really stupid and that businesses should be allowed, Joe, shocker, to do business and not politics, maybe that was a good idea and we should declare a rapprochement here. Leftist rule. So leftist rule number 1, boycotts are great. We think boycotts suck. Let's embrace the new rules and show them how much boycotts suck. Leftist rule number 2, Twitter audits are a great thing. You know, Twitter audits show, you know what I mean? Let's go back 57 years, find someone, of course, Twitter didn't exist 57 years ago, but you get the point. And find a tweet Joe Armacost sent out when he was 7.5.
Whoa.
It said, gosh, I don't like this kid next door to me. He's a meanie. New York Times finds out the kid next door, Joe, happened to be Asian. Joe's anti-Asian. He said something when he was 7. Fire Armacost right now. Twitter on.
Man.
Now, Joe, Joe's like, I better stay with Twitter. Folks, Twitter, just kidding. We love Joe. Twitter audits suck and they're really stupid. So let's show them. It's time to Twitter audit every single leftist out there. Find out what they wrote in their past. Let's make sure those boycotts we know suck, that the people who sponsor these folks as well. The Lenin Project, you know, the Lincoln Project, it's really the Lenin Project. You know, the Never Trump grifters out there that are one of them who has some contracts with the Russians or had them, you know, those guys, the Lenin Project. Yeah. Let's check out their Twitter history because I've seen it and it's not pretty. It's really ugly. They want to Twitter audit everyone who's not a liberal. Let's Twitter audit them too. You want to get into historical grievances with no context for change at all? Anyone in history who's made a mistake, however catastrophic it may be, wipe that history clean. Let's not talk about it, Joe. Let's stigmatize and rip down statues and let's everybody who didn't agree by what today's historical standards are or today's standards in contrast to historical standards, they're all evil. Okay, fine. Well, let's do that. If that's your new rule, it's a new rule for us too. When do we start talking about the Democrats' history of racism in the South? The Democrat, remember the Dixiecrats, Democrats? Can we talk? No, you can't talk about that. You can't talk about that. No. We're only talking about the Civil War statute, not the Democrats' profound history with racism. When are we going to talk about FDR and his internment of the Japanese during World War II? FDR, you know, the New Deal Democrat, you know, FDR, their hero, who they've lionized. You said historical grievances without context are a good thing. Okay, well, let's do it. Let's do that too. Finally, one more. There's no room for resolution, redemption, or anything like that in people's lives when it comes to a leftist. They find something you did that's wrong, you are to be publicly stoned and humiliated. Folks, I believe in forgiveness and redemption, but only if you do too. If you don't as a leftist, I'm sorry, but you can't be forgiven either. New rules. You wanted them. Now you can chew on them.
You just heard Dan Bongino.